601. Errors are report. Oh, for just those small things that should have been included on Friday. For the website.
Pretty good. Good evening, everyone. It is 6 o'clock on September 16th, 2025. This is the regular meeting of the Township Board of the Chartered Township of Meridian. We'll call ourselves to order. First on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Will all who are able please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on our agenda is item 3, a roll call. Will Clerk Demas please call the roll?
Supervisor Hendrickson?
Here.
Clerk Demas? Here. Treasurer Duchesne?
Here.
Trustee Lentz?
Here.
Trustee Sumlin? Trustee Trezise?
Here.
Trustee Wilson?
Here.
6 board members present.
Thank you very much. Our next agenda item is item 4A, a recognition of Treasurer Phil Duchesne. With us this evening for a special presentation, we have State Representative Julie Brixey.
Good evening, members of the board and members of the public and department directors who are here this evening. It's my pleasure to come here on the occasion of Treasurer Duchesne's last day, and I appreciate the supervisor's willingness to indulge me in a very small presentation for Treasurer Duchesne. Treasurer, would you mind joining me here so that I can give you a presentation in person? So I have here what we call a special tribute in the legislature, and this is something that members are able to draft and present to people who have done something special, and the governor and the lieutenant governor sign on and agree that those tributes are worthy. In addition, because this district is covered by multiple people, Representative Cernoglu is also one of the signers of the tribute, as well as Senator Singh. And all of us recognize that Treasurer Duchesne has really made a significant contribution to Meridian Township and to public service and to the state of Michigan. And I'm not going to read the resolution, but suffice it to say, Phil has a very long record of service, community service, right here in our area. He moved here in the 80s for volunteering with Don Regal, and has had a continued commitment to public service, especially serving as president of Rotary and Kiwanis clubs, as a past president of Rotary. These are real community service organizations and positions, just like serving the township board is. So we are really sad to see you go, but really, really grateful for all of your community service to Meridian Township. Thank you so much, Phil.
Thank you, Julie, so much. Appreciate it. The supervisor indulged me. I'd like to just do a couple thank yous myself, so I can take the plaque off the keyboard. I want to express my gratitude to our 45,000 residents of Meridian Township for putting your trust in me these past 9 years. Meridian Township is a wonderful community. Our citizens are kind and generous and really committed to the overall public good of our region. It's been a true honor to be your trustee and your treasurer the past 9 years. I want to thank members of the board, Clerk Demas, Supervisor Hendrickson, Trustee Wilson, Trustee Trezise, Trustee Lentz, and Trustee Sumlin, who is not here. as well. While we haven't always agreed on the issues this term, we have always respected each other's opinion. We've always thought that each other had the best interests of the public in mind, and we worked together as a very solid professional board, and I'm very proud of that time. I also want to thank my many wonderful friends who helped get me elected and be successful as an elected official. In particular, I want to thank a few. First of all, my wife, Gail. Your undying support and encouragement made all the difference. Thank you. Former trustee Andy Such, who's not here. Andy got this all started, encouraged me to come down to Town Hall and talk to some people. Former treasurer and state representative Julie Brixey. Julie, you've been a wonderful mentor and a friend, and you've taught me so much. Thank you. Deputy Manager Dan Opsimer. Dan, you are so capable, so hardworking. You're a true leader, and you've helped me all along the way, and you're great contributor to Meridian Township success. Former Manager Frank Wall. Frank, you helped me so much over these years. And last but not least is Stephen Geebies. Stephen, no one represents the best values in Meridian Township more than you do. You are here the first thing in the morning, last thing at night. Anyone has any kind of problem, starting off with IT, but virtually any problem, you fix them, and you put in so many hours, and we all benefit from that. Thank you, Stephen. I'm really proud of the many accomplishments of the board the past 9 years, some of which this board has been part of. We furthered our deep commitment to public safety. We have a stronger public safety, and we're led by Chief Grillo and Chief Hamill. I think we're the strongest we've been in 9 years. And our residents recognize that. We're fiscally responsible. Our reserve funds have never been higher, and we're very careful to keep that reserve. We've expanded our unparalleled park system and pathway system. Director Brzezinski's, oh, there you are. Courtney, you had big shoes to fill, and you filled them and done more. We have Town and Road Park and the finest outdoor market in the region, and thanks to your leadership. We've improved our local roads. 165 miles have already been improved, and we're still going. We've also focused on commercial redevelopment and our aging infrastructure. We've got a ways to go yet. We certainly made a commitment, and the Hazlitt Village Square is certainly examples that enough focus, things get done. Being your treasurer, serving you has been the best job of my life. I'll miss seeing all of you at the treasurer's counter and here at these meetings. Thanks for your trust in me, and it's been a true honor to serve you. Thank you all.
We do have a presentation on behalf of the board as well. And I want to add my congratulations on your retirement and our well wishes as a group to you for many years to come of exciting times with Gail, and we're looking forward to that for you. We also have a plaque and a proclamation here, and I won't be as creative. I am going to read it because I do think there's a lot that needs to be said. And so, whereas Treasurer DeShane has been a longtime resident of Meridian Township and worked professionally for over 3 decades in the computer software industry, and whereas Treasurer DeShane was elected to the Township Board in 2016, then appointed as treasurer by the board in 2018, and later elected by the voters as treasurer in 2020 and 2024. And whereas Treasurer DeShane has ably represented the interests of the board and citizens of Meridian Township, having previously served on the Park Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, Election Commission, and Transportation Commission. And whereas Treasurer DeShane has also served as a board member of the Michigan Townships Association, co-chair of the Capital Area Treasurers Association, Secretary-Treasurer of the Capital Area Transportation Authority, and chair of the Ingham County Materials Management Planning Commission. He has also been the past president of the Kiwanis Club of Hazlitt and Okemos and the Rotary Club of Hazlitt and Okemos. And whereas in his 7 years leading the Treasurer's Office, Treasurer DeShane has continued to improve the efficiency of the office, significantly enhancing online payment options, which we'll hear about tonight, securing professional advisors to enhance township investment strategies, and providing easy-to-read, transparent tax bill information. And whereas Treasurer DeShane has served the Meridian Township community capably, and the Township Board wishes him well as he embarks into new areas of service in the township and a well-earned retirement. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Township Board of the Charter Township of Meridian, Ingham County, Michigan, wishes publicly to recognize, commend, and thank Phil DeShane for his invaluable contributions to and impacts on the work of this board and the quality of life in the community. The board is grateful for your outstanding public service. Township Board of the Charter Township of Meridian hereby presents this tribute of appreciation to Treasurer Phil DeShane.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This means so much to hear from all of you, my peers, and you've been a good board to work with, and I'm honored to receive this award. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And no easy act to follow. Our next presentation will come from Manager Dempsey concerning the topic of the 2026 Township Budget. Manager Dempsey, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Supervisor and board members. Pleasure to be here. And yes, Treasurer DeShane gets to sit through one last budget presentations and discussion, so can't escape that. So this evening, this is sort of a triple header for all of you with regards to the budget. It's on your agenda 3 times. We have this overview presentation that I'll provide initially. We have the public hearing set, so we have an opportunity for the public to comment if they so choose to do so, and then we'll have a discussion later on. We provided your budget books to you, if you remember at your last meeting a couple of weeks ago. I will say up front, there are a few items that will get slightly changed. Nothing that impacts sort of the primary content that I'll describe, but Director Blondie will explain that during the discussion period. So she'll walk through what those specific changes are. And obviously that'll be our opportunity to delve into any questions. So with that, just want to jump into the budget. And before I do though, just a reminder, and it wasn't that long ago where we presented our mid-year report as far as progress, so I won't belabor this point, but at the end of the day, it's really the budget that allows us to do all the work that we do, right? It's the funds that provide the salaries for our employees, who are the core to the township operations, right? We can't do any of this work without those employees and without the work that they do. And, we have a list of amazing accomplishments the year to date. This is only a fraction of what we do. And I often emphasize, and you'll hear this from me over time, it's really also the day-to-day work, right? It's those meetings that people have with our residents. It's the phone calls they take. It's the work at the counter. It's fixing broken pipes late at night. It's responding to emergencies, at all hours of the day and all weather, right? It's that day-to-day work that really is the core of what local government services is about. We have a great team and great employees that effectuate that. So just keeping that in mind as we walk through the specifics. So we'll start with the bottom line. So our 2026 recommended budget for the board, we have a total budget of just below $69 million. So that includes all of our funds, our general fund, all of our enterprise funds, component units like the DDA, the Brownfield Authority, et cetera. Our general fund revenue is just over $29.5 million. We have projected expenses just below $30 million. So we are proposing a use of fund balance for this budget year of around $324,000. Sort of a footnote to that, of course, we're going to be talking in a few minutes about healthcare costs. So we've learned some new information since we put the budget together that will potentially, and I just say potentially impact that, but we'll get to that shortly. Budget challenges for 2026. So if we were to look at sort of those things that, really impact our bottom line and impact our overall cost, these 5 are definitely significant factors and probably the most significant. Wages, of course, the vast majority of our costs are always personnel costs. Right now in this budget, we have a 3% increase budgeted for all of our employees, an inflationary increase. Of course, that's always in addition to anyone that's walking through their step progression, right? People that might be going up in steps. So some employees could see more than that, but again, the inflationary increase is 3%. We know, in having some preliminary conversations, that we expect as we enter collective bargaining over the next few years, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later, that employees are probably going to be seeking higher increases than that to keep pace with the significant inflation that we've seen, and also just being able to be competitive from a local government standpoint. Pension debt and healthcare, I've got a number of slides. I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in just a moment. Infrastructure and capital improvements. This is true of any local government. There's never enough money to do all the things that you want to do with facilities, with infrastructure, whether it's water, sewer, roads, right? There's always more needs to do. For instance, when they renovated this building a couple of years ago, unfortunately, they didn't have the funds to do the bathrooms. We would love to renovate the bathrooms in this facility. That's not part of this budget. That was one of the items that we pulled out as we were looking at things. And I could go down a laundry list of items similar to that with respect to always high level of needs on infrastructure and capital improvements across our 9 facilities in the township. And then Headley and Proposal A, and I've got a slide to talk more about that shortly. So with pension funding levels, this is the major components of our pension plan in terms of those largest groups and the breakdown. You can see the funding ratios from 23, 24, and 25. What I always go to first, of course, is really the total funding ratio for our MERS plans. That has gone up from 74% to 75%. That's about where the state average has been the last few years, so we're roughly, I'd say, average with other, with the overall state average. Obviously, there's communities that are higher than that, and then there are some that are below that. One of the things that sort of stands out here is that when you look at individual funds, you'll see the percentages go down slightly, but our overall go up. That's because the numbers here for each of those individual component groups do not reflect our surplus funds. The surplus funds are within the MERS pension plan, and they're there in the event that we, at some point, would not be able to make our annual required contribution, our ARC, and then we could utilize those funds. But those dollars are in there, and they do count in that bolded bottom line. So that's the fully loaded sort of pension overview. And then we have a number of plans. These tend to be much smaller with some of our newer employees and some adjustments that occurred with our plans dating back to 2017, and then a change with the command and patrol plan back in 2020. And those are higher percentages overall just because of their newer plans. And again, they don't reflect individually the surplus funds that we do hold. 2026 pension contribution. So what does this boil down to in terms of dollars and cents for the budget itself? Our annual required contribution, again, the ARC, is just under $4.4 million, but we do contribute additional funds, right? So we have $1.5 million because of the dedicated millage for police and fire that goes into our surplus funds to help with our overall funding. So our total MERS payment is just shy of $5.9 million. So significant resources being directed into our pension system. Our overall liability right now is around $98 million. So we have roughly about $74 million in assets that we have. So significant progress in recent years. That funding ratio going back to 2016 was in the mid-50s. So again, we've made substantial progress in that. And kudos to the board and the boards before to recognize and address that issue. If we were to get to 100% funding ratio, just saying over the next decade, the additional contribution would have to go up about $1.2 million per year. Right now, with the additional police and fire dollars at 1.5, if you sort of look at our projection, we're roughly 8 to 15 years away, depending on how our investment assumptions play out. MERS uses a 6.93 investment assumption, which is slightly lower than their historical numbers, which are around 7.5, and they ratcheted those back. They found that those numbers were too aggressive. So with that, again, we're somewhere between 8 and 15 years away to getting 100% funded at the sort of current trajectory and pace that we're at. So good progress, but we still have a ways to go. Healthcare. So this is new information that we actually just received yesterday. This process has been taking longer than usual. Our incumbent provider, Blue Care Network, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, they have, our current plan right now is around $2.2 million net. And by net, that means we get a substantial refund for prescriptions. So manufacturers that offer rebates on specialty drugs will provide that rebate as a pass-through on the healthcare plan. So our actual costs are usually around 2.4 to 2.5 million, but the net, I'm just using for simplicity's sake, about 2.2, assuming that that number is fairly consistent. If you look at where Blue Care Network and Blue Cross Blue Shield, where they came in, the incumbent provider under the status quo plan of where we stand today, the expected net costs are about 2.8 million, so roughly just under about $600,000 increase. So that's actually about a 26% increase. However, this is still preliminary and they're looking at that. They have some revised quotes that look at our plan in a little bit different way. So we're a self-funded plan, so we have this whole complicated formula with our stop-loss ratios, right? So we pay up to a certain point, and then the plan will pay above that point. So there's some different formulas there that will adjust that. Unfortunately, that doesn't get us a lot of savings, so we're looking at other options. The first other option that we received is from Priority Health. They have a couple different plans that they put in front of us. Those range from about 2.6 to 2.8 million, so an increase of 18 to 24%. Obviously not as low as we'd like to see, so we are also exploring an option with the pool, which is an aggregated healthcare plan of school districts and other local governments that was started a number of years ago in Western Michigan and has grown. So we're hoping that they're going to come in and hopefully be a better bid price than what we're seeing from these groups. The the current estimate rather in the budget is about 12%. So we accommodated roughly, just under half of the increase that we were seeing from Blue Cross Blue Shield. So we'll see how that plays out. Taxable value and assessed value. So when we look at Headley Amendment and Proposal A, one of the good things here is that if you look at our taxable value that our tax rate is based off of, that's in the lighter color, we've seen, pretty steady growth over the last 5 years. And we're projecting about 3.7% growth for the next year in that. And that's a combination of the calculation for inflation factor as well as new taxable value, right? So new properties coming online that haven't been on the tax rolls before. The numbers for 2026 will come out sometime next month, so we'll see where the state goes with that, but it's really the 25 numbers that drive our 26 budget. But the point I really want to emphasize here is that if you look at that darker color, that's our assessed value. You can see how it's substantially above where we're at. So we're going to be right around that $2.4 billion mark. And if you look at our assessed value, we're just below the $3 billion mark. If you look at the differential there between the assessed and taxable value, that results in what I would say or describe as sort of a loss of tax revenue to the township of about $5 million a year. So it's a pretty substantial differential. And this is the same thing that local governments have been talking about for years now with Headley and Proposal A, that we're not realizing the full potential of our properties' values within the community because of that gap, right? And we all hear the impact now that tax cap is having on the ability of people to sell their home and to move out, because oftentimes what people are finding is that their tax, bill has been so suppressed for such a long time. When they go somewhere new, it's a pretty significant increase. So, it impacts a lot of different people, and it's certainly a system that, we can, MML and MTA have been beating the drum for years. It needs to be reformed, and we need to sort of address that to help local governments. So significant impact on our budget and what we can do. But fortunately, we do still have some growth there, and that does help our budget. General fund summary, so some highlights here. So initial budget request, working together with the M team and department directors, we came in about $1.6 million above our revenue in terms of our expenses. So we immediately went to work and started to identify some potential savings. So we proposed a number of things to do that, eliminating our general fund contribution to local roads and relying on the millage, the special millage, to address those. Delaying other capital improvements, phone system upgrades, some parking lot improvements, a few other things. Delaying our BS&A software upgrades. I describe people outside of local government as BS&A is essentially our enterprise reporting system, right? We use it for just about everything. We use it for finance. We use it for planning and development. It's our main assessing tool. It's actually where that software started as an assessing software, and a lot of local governments in Michigan use it. They're moving to the cloud. It's an expensive proposition, but it's also one we can't avoid forever. Sometime in the next couple of years, we're going to have to make that switch. We took a number of staffing adjustments that I'll touch on here in a moment. We're proposing to eliminate HSA contributions. That was done for the 25 budget, but we were able to come back to you and sort of reinstitute that based on 25 performance. But it looks like we're going to have to adjust here and go back to eliminating that. And then no MERS supplemental payment. It's not, we have the separate fund for that, but that's excluded, so we're not going to be able to include that this year as well. Staffing summary, full-time staff, we have 175 proposed here, and that's a shift from last year of only one. We are eliminating the Director of Project Management and Operations position, and then we're going to adjust the utility billing. We had a supervisor position that hasn't been filled. Very difficult to find that type of person for what we're looking to do. So we're going to shift that to utility bookkeeper with the hope that we can upskill that one of the staff members over time and then re-examine that role. We are reducing several intern positions in a couple departments, communications, community planning and development. And then the one position we are adding is utility worker in water. And that's hopefully to accelerate our progress that we've been making with meters swap out. So as you know, we have a lot of meters across the township, water meters that need to be updated due to failures, and that will hopefully help us move along with that process and program. Fund balance projection. So where do we project ourselves to stand at the end of the year? So our current projected amount at the end of 26 for general fund is about $12.2 million. And the capital projects fund, we're just over $820,000. And the pension stabilization fund, we're just over $1.7 million. So about $14.9 million total. That's about 49% of overall general fund expenditures. And then we have a column there that lays out the target. So the target was set a number of years ago at 25%, which at that time was around $13 million. So you can see, and this was something that I referenced in my quick overview a couple weeks ago, we essentially are a little bit more heavily loaded right now in the general fund portion of this compared to the capital projects fund and the pension stabilization fund. So something to think about here in terms of how we might potentially reallocate that. But again, because of good fiscal stewardship, we do have this solid fund balance, which I think as we start to look at some of the cost pressures, healthcare being a primary one, it's good to potentially have a resource here to fall back on should we have to rely on that. Moving on to some of the activities within the budget, capital project fund. This is reduced from just over $700,000 from the current year. So not a lot of things here, but some critical things. Elevator modernization that in this building and public safety that's required to keep up with code and ensure that, again, we have safely functioning elevators in our buildings. We have $300,000 for the public safety solar array, but that's contingent on the potential to receive a federal grant of $400,000 to complete that project. So we should be hearing about that as the federal government works through its budget process. Yeah. I'll leave it at that, yeah. We have the service center generator design and purchase, and then we did put some money in here because it is a top priority for the board, $50,000, essentially seed money on if we need to move quickly on the senior center next year in terms of any, whether it's design plans or preliminary work that might be outside of any grant dollars. So just to have some dollars that we could quickly tap into without a lot of red tape. Pathway projects due to grant funding and trails millage, obviously we still have the ability to move forward with phase 3 of the MSU to Lake Lansing project. So that's on the docket for next year. That project is currently being designed. There could be that phase 4 that runs along the rail under Marsh Road rather. Obviously, we've been running into challenges with the railroad and trying to do that. We do have a pathway that, circumvents that, but that is a long-term goal and we'll continue to pursue it. Local roads, obviously, we have the dedicated millage and the dedicated resources for this fund. Progress to date since that program was started, 44 miles of local roads reconstructed, 94 miles of preventive maintenance. We covered a lot of ground, but with 150 miles of local roads in the township, we've got a ways to go still, but great progress and certainly I think a model program for the state of Michigan, particularly I think for townships. In the 26 program, details to follow here in a couple months, but another projected $6.4 million in activity for that. So a lot of road work ahead. The motor pool, in terms of investment, this is one that, again, I think the township has been more proactive in recent years, which is good, making sure that the fleet remains functional and viable and not sort of letting everything really deteriorate. So there are a number of vehicle purchases in the budget, about the same budgeted number as last year. So Parks and Rec has a passenger van. You can see the list here, Gators, a mower. Police have a couple vehicles, and then Public Works. The big one is the Vector truck, right, that addresses our sewer lines, and that's the biggest of all these expenses at about $600,000. So, but again, important equipment. Our people can only serve the community if they have the tools to be able to do that. So key investments. Water and sewer funds. So we are proposing a change here, but no change in ready-to-serve fees. If you recall last year's budget, those were increased. No change in sewer consumption rates. Those were also increased last year. But we are proposing an increase in water consumption of about 9.5%. When factoring in sewer and the overall bill for the average bill that we have in the township, we project that to be about a 3.7% increase. We recognize our residents never want to see an increase in these fees and rates, but the reality is, we have an aging system and the investment that's necessary to be proactive is important. So we want to continue to do that, and I'll talk about some of those investments in a moment. Even with those changes based on the research that Public Works did, you can see that we still have one of the lowest rates in the region across the board. So compared to a number of our counterparts around the region, it's significantly lower. Again, not always solace to the folks who are getting the bill, but it's critical to make sure that we're keeping up with the pace of investment that we need to do. And we are, of course, going to be moving ahead with the rate study, which will really be a key tool for giving us a longer-term picture in the coming years. As we talked, that's a top goal of the board, and we'll be delivering that to you. And then the projects that come with that, of course, we have several water projects, Timber Lane and Roseland Water Main. We have a water main in the 1600 block of Hazlitt Road, Forest Hills Lift Station for sanitary. We have about 2 miles of line rehab work to be completed, and then the advanced metering infrastructure, which helps us to reduce the amount of in the field collection that we can do and do more remote collection, as well as in the future, hopefully help us address those issues where we see things go awry with particular meters to advance sort of our knowledge in-house. So there you're looking at a total of, over around $4 million of investment in that infrastructure, which again is good, but these are really sort of the critical projects. These are the things that our staff have identified as those recurring issues that they really want to address before a problem gets worse. But the list, of course, as I mentioned earlier, is always much longer. And then Parks and Recreation projects, again, continuing to be very strategic about our investment, ensuring that things still move ahead. We have the Trailhead project near the Township Service Center. That's dependent on a grant from the Michigan Natural Resource Trust Fund. We have the Wanch Park and Harris Nature Center kayak launches. Nancy Moore Park Pavilion and restroom updates. Still working on the potential to identify and develop a cricket field. And then a small match for the Red Cedar River Water Trail project. Obviously, that's mostly grant-driven. So like we have, I think, historically, leveraging some of our dollars in many cases to utilize grant funds and increase the investment that we're able to secure, not just relying on the township's money. So looking ahead, what are the things that are sort of unknown? The big one right now, of course, is the healthcare cost, being able to finalize that. We're hoping to get the pools bid in here in the next few weeks. We're hoping to refine the Blue Care Network and their bid here in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully we'll have better numbers, but timing here could be a little, not necessarily aligned with where we're at in terms of budget, but trying to bring those two things together. The state budget and revenue sharing, we've been very conservative in what we've been doing to estimate revenue sharing. As I mentioned in the last meeting, the vast majority of our revenue sharing is constitutional. That's close to like 4.7, 4.8 million. We basically look at where we've been the last several quarters and use that to project out for next year. The statutory revenue sharing, which has been sort of the one that the legislature has been debating, pulling back. That's a very relatively small portion, rather. That's about $250,000. So we'll see where that plays out. We have collective bargaining coming up. We have our first contract coming up with our professional supervisory union here this year. And then we have police and fire next year, and we have our remaining units coming up in '27. And as I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of those bargaining units that haven't maybe seen the salary increases that we've had in public safety are certainly interested in what the township is going to be able to do there. And then a project that we know is forthcoming as we slowly learn more about it is the Okemos Consolidated Drain Project. We don't know yet the true magnitude of it, but sort of rough estimates could be a $250,000, $500,000 annual cost to the township over potentially a 30-year period. So it could be a very significant contribution in terms of what the township gets assessed. But again, that's very early and that is off a little bit, but something we're actively keeping an eye on and doing some of our own analytics to better understand what that might look like. That all being said, I think, I want to acknowledge again the M team for their willingness to come to the table and really work together to figure out a way to present you with a balanced budget. I think we tried to be very conservative and continue the tradition of good financial stewardship that the township has had, focusing on needs and not wants. Certainly trying to balance those increased costs with strategic investments to ensure that we're still moving the township forward. And then, we're fortunate to have continued taxable value growth. As that trend sort of continues on, we get further and further from the Great Recession. I think it's easy to forget that things can go the other way. It's hard to predict international and national economies, but we'll see. That's why having a strong fund balance, I think, is important. And then the bottom line here is we have staff and we have employees who are willing to be collaborative and work with us, and we're going to need that. As we go into collective bargaining, it's going to have to be a partnership. We've got headwinds, we've got things that we've got to address, but I think we've got the right people to be willing to sit down and figure it out and do the best thing for the township while trying to make sure that we can retain our employees and ensure that our employees, want to be here and are, getting their needs met, both from a salary standpoint and hopefully from a benefit standpoint as well. So that's the overview of the 2026 budget. Again, we have the public hearing coming up and we have the discussion later on, but if there's anything burning we want to discuss at this point, I'll defer to the board.
Board members, I think since we have this on for discussion later on in the meeting, we can hold our questions if that's all right until that time. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you.
So next on our agenda is item 5, citizens address agenda items and non-agenda items. There are 3 opportunities for public comment at tonight's meeting. Right now at our public hearing, which is agenda item 10A, and then comments from the public at the end of the meeting, agenda item 13. Members of the public who wish to address our agenda or any item not on our agenda have an opportunity to do so at any of those times. Those who wish to address the board must complete a green card, which you can find on the table by the door, and present the card to a board member or the member of the township staff prior to the beginning of the public comment period. When it's your turn, the supervisor, that's me, will call you up to the podium to speak to the topics indicated. While it's not required, it will be helpful for the sake of our meeting minutes if you provide your name and address for the record at the beginning of your remarks. Citizens are required to limit comments to 3 minutes. An automated system keeps track of the time, and an indicator light and audible beep will alert you when your time has expired. Members of the board value comment and input from the public. The meeting format and rules, however, do restrict board members from engaging in conversation with commenters or answering questions directly. Questions and concerns may be addressed by board members at a later time or may be referred to staff to follow up on. Please remember to address all comments to the board and or the board's chair and not to individual board members or to others in the audience. With that said, we have several green cards. If anyone else has a green card, please hand it off to a member of the staff. First up this evening is Charles Malesko. And then we have Stephen Bagnosi on deck.
Good evening, board members, Supervisor Hendrickson, Manager Dempsey. Thank you for this opportunity to comment on this budget. Thanks to Manager Dempsey and his team for the hard work that they put into 2026 budget. I understand that there were some obstacles to overcome, and it was not easy. I am Chuck Malesko, President of the Meridian Township Firefighters Association, Local 1600. I would like to begin by acknowledging the commitment township leadership has shown to the fire department over the past 5 years. We've been able to regain 6 positions that were lost through attrition due to the recession in the early 2000s. This has improved daily staffing and response times to citizens in need within this community. Wage increases were given to both the police department and the fire department that greatly improved recruitment and retention. With that being said, our staffing level of 36 members in fire suppression was established over 25 years ago. Over the past 2 decades, the number of alarms has increased from 3,500 to over 6,500 a year, and is increasing every year with an average this year of 18 alarms per day. We are below the national standard of 1 firefighter per 1,000 residents, with an estimated 45,000 residents today. Our daily minimum staffing is 7 firefighters. This allows us to staff 3 ambulances in a battalion chief vehicle with no dedicated staffing to a fire engine. This is unsustainable and detrimental to the health and wellness of the firefighters serving this township. 2 years ago, there was an agreement with the township leadership that the staffing of the fire department was not adequate. A plan was agreed upon to add an additional 6 firefighters and a fire inspector over the next 3 to 5 years. So I ask you to continue this commitment of adding an additional 6 firefighters and a fire inspector over the next 3 to 5 years. Allow the fire department to recall members when the daily staffing drops below 10. This will allow the fire department to guarantee a staffed fire engine to respond to priority medical emergencies, fire alarms, vehicle accidents, wires down, and structure fires. This will also improve daily training that will improve and maintain firefighter performance during emergencies within the township. I'll conclude. Meridian Township is a wonderful community. We are honored to serve the residents of this township. We're looking forward to future talks and plans to remedy the staffing needs of this fire department to better serve those that reside and work within Meridian Township. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Stephen Vagnozzi, and then Vincent Tomanika, you're on deck.
Steve Agnozzi, 2144 Woodfield Road. I speak tonight to recognize and congratulate Treasurer DeShane on his service to the township. I have worked with Phil, starting with the Transportation Commission and now on the CATA Board. And he currently serves as Secretary Treasurer of the CATA Board. I have found him to be a very capable, professional public servant. And I wish him the best in retirement. Thank you.
Thank you. Vincent Tomanika, and that's the last green card we have this evening. If anyone else wishes to address the board, now would be a time to fill out a green card.
I'm here to speak regarding the proposed apartment complex next to Central Park Apartments in Okemos. And the zoning issue is what I'll focus on. The multi-level, 3-level apartment buildings, 300 units, I believe is the number, adjacent to upscale single-family homes is putting apples next to oranges. So people invested their life savings into building luxury homes, $600,000 approximately each. And then it's like a betrayal of trust because, for instance, in my case, I was made to understand by contacting the township 10 years ago that there wouldn't be any building next to it, that it wasn't zoned for that. There's just a narrow strip of that could be built upon. Now we're finding out that it's all owned by a developer and can be built upon. So that's $600,000 down the drain as far as the buying into the lifestyle we thought we'd be buying into. And single-family homes wouldn't be so objectionable at all. That's apples and apples. Even condos would be acceptable. And the opinion I'm expressing today is the unanimous opinion of everybody in the neighborhood. You know, everyone I've talked to. We had a really big showing at the library. Well, there must have been about, I would guess, about 60 of the 80 households were represented there, I would estimate. And everyone was of the same opinion and feeling strongly about it. The zoning, as I understand it, was back in 2004, it was changed from the previous zoning to multifamily. And then the Central Park Apartments went in approximately 2011. Well, the zoning should have been changed at that point to reflect the change in what we had there, you know, with single-family luxury homes. So it's incongruous to put the two together at this point. We realize that apartment complexes have been built next to single-family homes before in Meridian Township, but this case is different. You know, every case has got its unique aspects. One of the aspects of this is that the proposed plan would in effect trap us into the neighborhood. We wouldn't be able to get out without going down Belvedere or Columbus Avenue to get to Central Park Drive. So we'd have to drive through that chaos to get there. When I mean chaos, all the traffic going in and out all day long from a very large apartment complex. And the traffic already is really bad. We pretty much, in discussion between ourselves, realized that we won't be able to make any left turns anymore getting out of the neighborhood. So it'll be a circumlocucious route just to go around to get where we wanted to go to begin with. That's just one aspect of it, not to mention all the other, okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? Seeing none, public comment is closed at 6:49 PM. Next on our agenda is item 6, the Township Manager Report. Manager Dempsey.
Good evening again. Just two items. One is a reminder that we have our next listening session for the Township Board on September 30th at 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at St. Luke Lutheran Church. So we encourage folks to join us for that. Information online. If people cannot attend that event, they can go on to the Township's website and submit questions at that point. So encourage folks to do that who can't be there. And then the other one is I want to recognize one of our staff members that's departing, Kim Graham, who's our accounts payable specialist. She came to us after retiring from the state of Michigan 5 years ago. So she's decided to sort of head off into the retirement sunset a little bit more completely now. But we appreciate all of her work that she's done for the township over the last 5 years. She brought some good professionalism and great ideas from her experience at the state that we've adopted here at the township. So wanted to thank her for her service.
Thank you very much. Board members, any questions for Manager Dempsey? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 7, board members' reports of activities and announcements. Any board members with activities and announcements? Trustee Wilson.
Last Wednesday, we had the Community Resource Commission, CRC, meeting and talked primarily about assistance to lower-income residents related to the holidays. So you'll notice out in the hallway that there is a coat collection box. We are inviting anyone in the township to drop off their coats so that they can be distributed. Also, there's a flyer on the table over here to my left for a request for donations for our holiday basket assistance. It's always challenging trying to come up with a holiday meal for those who may not have one. So we're working on that. The other thing I wanted to mention was, as a public service announcement, that Grand River Avenue, starting on Monday, May 29th, is going to be completely closed at North Meridian Road. You will no longer be able to go north until sometime in November. We got an MDOT notice about this. So they're going to have to rebuild the road to raise it to meet the bridge. So just a heads up to everybody because that is going to be a chaotic situation.
May 29th?
I'm sorry, did I say May? I beg your pardon, September 29th.
Until November.
Until sometime in November.
Okay.
Yep,
Thank you.
thanks.
Clerk Demas.
Today is National Voter Registration Day, so the clerk's office is encouraging residents to register to vote. We've been holding a series of voter registration drives. We held one on Saturday during the farmers market, and we held a couple today at Okemos and Hazlitt High Schools, and we will hold one more tomorrow during the farmers market, and that's from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. On the marketplace on the green. Also, I attended the BOE conference, which is Bureau of Elections, and participated in a tabletop exercise focused on emergency response planning that happened a couple weeks ago. So I wanted to bring it up here, and I learned a lot from that session. That's it.
Thank you very much. Trustee Lentz.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention I was able to join Emma Campbell and the Meridian Conservation Corps a couple Saturdays ago for their Sustainable Saturday, Stewardship Saturdays, that's it, at Red Cedar Glen Preserve. I would love to have other board members join sometime. It was so much fun to be able to do those native plantings, take out some of those invasives, and the folks that came along the way were so knowledgeable about this area that I was really happy to be able to do so. And it's a testament to the township that we have a program like that. So thank you to your staff, Director. I also want to acknowledge, in addition to the slew of others, the treasurer here, outside of everything that's already been said, for continued public service by joining that Friends of Historic Meridian Board. I think that really shows your commitment to the community, and I think that's a notable choice to make, and I appreciate that immensely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other board members? I'll add that I attended the beginning of our very first inaugural Youth Commission meeting last night, where Clerk Thomas was also present to swear in the members of that new body. They looked like they were ready to jump in with both feet and had a full agenda even for their first meeting. They'll be meeting monthly here in the Township Hall Room, and we're looking very much forward to their insights, their ideas, and how they'll be able to contribute over the next year. So looking forward to that new group weighing in on a number of topics. Any other board member? Treasurer DeShane.
I don't know whose idea that was. It wasn't mine. That's a brilliant idea to get us involved like that. And it's just a great way to introduce them to government, get them connected, and that in turn will connect their neighbors and their friends and their families. It's a win-win-win. So whoever brought it up, it's a wonderful idea. I'm sure it will succeed.
All right. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 8, which is approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda this evening?
Motion to approve the agenda.
It's been moved by trustee Wilson. Supported by clerk Demas. Any discussion on the agenda? All those in favor of the agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the agenda carries. We have next on our agenda the consent agenda this evening. On our consent agenda, we have communications with the Township Board. At our places, you'll find a set of amended minutes. They are minor amendments clarifying a couple of spelling mistakes and the couple of times that need to be adjusted. You'll see those in red at your places there. We have also in your manila folders, the closed session minutes from our August 19th meeting, if you'll have a moment to review those. In addition, we have a temporary appointment of treasurer duties. With Treasurer DeShane's retirement, having not yet appointed a new treasurer, we need to make sure that we can still sign checks, among other things, so that our vendors get paid on time. As such, we are proposing to temporarily appoint Deanne, the deputy treasurer, to discharge those duties until a new appointment becomes effective. We also have an agreement for the Merchants and Medical Credit Corporation, the tax rates on our Form L 4029, some surplus equipment to dispose of, and an update from Treasurer DeShane on online payments. It's a mouthful from the consent agenda this evening. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda, including the amendment to the minutes, if you could? Treasurer DeShane.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
It's been moved by Treasurer DeShane. Do we have a support?
Support.
Supported by Clerk Demas.
Can I add the amendment with?
Treasurer DeShane, would you consider that a friendly amendment?
Yes, I would.
All right. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Treasurer DeShane.
Two comments. One is that Deanne Mueller will do an excellent job as the interim treasurer. She's very capable and is aware of the seriousness of the job, but will facilitate twice a week or twice a month check signings like this and make sure our vendors get paid quickly without any payments. In addition to that, she's got Director Blondie who will help her out whenever necessary, which is a great add-on to the treasurer's office. Would like to make a comment on about page 58, which is the online payment update that I provided my last report to the board, and then a summary on the next page from the Invoice Cloud. Our vendor, when I came on as treasurer in 2018, Director Geebies, Treasurer Brixey, and Finance Director Madison had already picked a vendor for online payments, which was Invoice Cloud, and they've made the next 7 years very easy for me because they've been an extremely good partner to work with. And you can see our numbers represent that we've gone from 4,800 online payments to 44,500, ninefold increase. And the cash amount has gone from $3 million to estimated $31.5 million. Our partnership with them is so strong that they've asked us to host their next users group meeting, which will be here in the town hall room on October 3rd. All are welcome to attend, but we're kind of their poster child, which is great. We want to be that. We want to be their success story. They'll give us the attention we need and make sure our residents are all being served properly by them. So it's been good. We've got a ways to go. Some cities are receiving up to 85% of their payments online. And the more we can move to online payments, it gives us more time to focus on the difficult payments and tracking down other things. So the automated stuff helps us be more efficient, and we're able to do that very well with Invoice Cloud. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion on the consent agenda this evening? Seeing none, will Clerk Demas please call the roll?
Clerk Demas, yes. Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Lentz?
Yes.
Trustee Trezise?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Hendrickson?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Also, could I have all the closed minute session?
Yes, if you haven't turned your closed session minutes in, please do so now.
Kathy's obviously.
Keep that for you to sign when you get a moment. All right, next item on the agenda is item 10A, hearings. We have our public hearing for the 2026 township budget. Manager Dempsey, did you want to tee us up, or are you?
No, I think you go ahead and open the public hearing. We'll reserve our further conversation.
Very good. Then we'll open our public hearing at 7:00 PM. Any members of the public wishing to address the board on the topic of the township budget for 2026, now would be the time. Seeing no members of the public rushing to the podium or to the table, we will go ahead and close the public hearing at 7:00 PM. All right. I'll do it to you again, Tim, I'm sorry. We ask that we take about a 5-minute recess, and we'll come back to jump into the plan unit development for Hewlett Road. Without objection, we stand at recess.
relationship different people and organizations want to have, because in a public world, you're at the food bank and you know exactly how everyone feels about you. And so you're not asking to give to some project.
Oh, sure, of course.
All right, we've got everyone back. All right, we will call ourselves back to order at 7:07 PM. And after so rudely preempting Director Schmidt, we will hand things back over to him for agenda item 11A, Plan Unit Development 25-012-3560 Hewlett Road.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor and members of the board. So the request in front of you this evening has been discussed was previously discussed at the previously discussed at the September 2nd, 2025 meeting. It's also the plan that was previously approved on August 4th, 2022. This plan was approved in 2022 after recommendation of approval by the Planning Commission. The applicant, in working through some of the issues on the site, ultimately accidentally allowed the plan to expire and resubmitted earlier this summer. The Planning Commission reviewed it, had no concerns, and recommended approval to the board. The board did hold a public hearing in accordance with the ordinance provisions, and you are being asked this evening to make a decision on the plan. Again, to reiterate, nothing has changed. They still do need to work out some minor issues with the drainage and easements, but it is essentially the exact same project that was reviewed in 2022 and recommended for approval. So at this time, staff has raised no major concerns, and we would recommend approval of the proposal for 3560 Hewlett Road, which would result in the construction of 5 new homes and the preservation of the existing farmhouse on the property.
Thank you very much. Trustee Trezise.
I move to adopt the resolution approving the planned unit development request from Jim Jagir for the redevelopment of the property at 3560 Hewlett Road.
It's been moved by Trustee Trezise. Do we have a support?
Support.
Supported by Trustee Wilson. Trustee Trezise.
I was on the planning commission the first time we approved this. It was a good plan. It's a good plan now. And I think we discussed it last week. It hasn't changed. And so I would say we approve it and go forward.
Trustee Wilson.
Agreed, and I am very pleased to see the reuse of the original Netzlaff farmhouse.
Okay. Other board members? I think one of the ancillary benefits that we talked about the last time around is that this will also complete the pathway, which has a gap in this area, as we can sort of see on the map there, which will connect our folks to the north up at Bennett and Hewlett down all the way to Jolly Road. And so I'm very excited that we're able to have a contiguous pathway down there as well. I may have been sitting on the planning commission when this came around. I think I might have been at that time, yeah. I feel like I've seen this 3 or 4 times before. And I supported it then, and I'll be happy to support it again. Any further discussion? Seeing none, this is a voice vote, so all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda this evening is text amendment 2025-07, parking lot landscape standards update. This is for final adoption, and we'll hand things back over to Director of Community Planning and Development, Tim Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, members of the board. This is the final step in the process for updating the middle third of the parking lot ordinance. We've previously updated the numerical standards. This is the parking lot landscaping standards. And then staff actually started work earlier this week on the final piece, which is sort of the technical jargony part that we need to update some stuff that just doesn't work very well for us. And so we'll be bringing that forward, presumably after the Planning Commission's upcoming gauntlet of projects. But the Planning Commission previously reviewed this back in April, May, and June of this year and recommended approval to the board. The board discussed the matter in August, had no major concerns, and at the direction of the board, we did, from their September 2nd meeting, we did publish this in the newspaper in anticipation of adoption. And so this evening, you are being asked to approve the final ordinance amendment, and that will be published as appropriate, and we will then continue moving along.
All right. Thank you very much. This item is up for final adoption. Trustee Lentz.
I move to adopt the resolution adopting text amendment 2025-07 to amend the Code of Ordinances of the Charter Township of Meridian at Section 86-752 to update the standards for parking lot landscaping in the township.
It's been moved by trustee Lentz. Does it have a support?
Support.
Supported by trustee Trezise. Trustee Lentz.
We've discussed this at this point quite a bit. Tim, I appreciate all the conversations we've had about updating parking lots in the township and, you know, the vision around zoning and what it can do to make our community better. So I appreciate you stewarding this along in the way you have.
Treasurer DeShane.
Dr. Schmidt, I want to thank you as well for this. This is the third or fourth time you brought together to us revised zoning ideas that really made a difference. They're proactive, progressive. First one you did was the Zoning Board of Appeals by scaling down those 9 criteria to, is it 5 now?
Seven.
You just made it clearer and more direct. I think it makes the ZBA work more effectively. I was on the ZBA with the 9 and the 7. It's a lot easier with the 7. So you have a real vision for zoning, and you brought that to the township, and I hope you'll continue to do that because it's been of great benefit to all of us.
Appreciate that.
Other discussion? I agree. I think we've talked about this a number of times, and I imagine that Director Schmidt and his staff are tired of talking about parking at these various meetings. But we are happy to see, some of these changes, which makes it much more understandable, much more uniform. And so, one of the things we can do is make our code of ordinances easier to understand to the public. And this certainly meets that criteria. I'll be supporting this evening, and I want to thank you and your team for the hard work, as well as the Planning Commission, who also took this up on a number of occasions as well. Any further discussion? Seeing none as an ordinance amendment, this is a roll call vote. Clerk Demas, will you please call the roll?
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Lentz?
Yes.
Trustee Trezise?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Hendrickson?
Yes.
Clerk Demas, yes. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And it is 5, Treasurer DeShane. Apologies. I cut it more than I thought I did.
All righty. Next up on our agenda is item 12A, board discussion items, the 2026 budget. We heard our presentation from Manager Dempsey at the beginning of the meeting. We held our public hearing in accordance with state statute, and that brings us to board discussion of the township budget. Manager Dempsey.
Yeah, so as I mentioned during my presentation, I wanted to give Director Blondie the opportunity to just step through a couple changes that need to be made within the budget document itself. So before we get into the extensive discussion, I think it makes sense to have her review those. So I'll let her do that.
All right, thank you. There are a couple minor edits, including corrections of formatting and updating a couple personnel summaries throughout the budget to match what we have on page 118 of the staffing plan. There's only a couple that didn't get transferred or updated. And then we'll start with page 19. So that's your summary of fees. We are recommending one more change. That's our mechanical, electrical, plumbing permit fee. We're recommending that be increased from the $50 base fee to a $60 base fee. So that's additional that you'll see in the final presentation. And then on page 81, that's our community needs fund. We were awarded a grant, so we're just adding that. It's going to be the grant revenue and the grant expenditure. So our net, it's going to net 0, but we do want to add that in our budget to make sure it's accounted for. And then on page 85, which is our ARPA funds, I do want to point out that all of our ARPA funds are spent. These are just the interest earned from our ARPA funds. But I missed the chill grant expenses that are coming up soon. So we wanted to make sure that's about $86,000. That's going to be added as an expense in there. It was already pre-approved. I just missed it putting it in the budget. And then there's also about a $14,000 amount for a water main replacement project that occurred this year that I missed to put into our projected. So at the end, our net fund balance will be about $55,000. But those are the 3 items I wanted to touch on. We are ready to discuss.
Okay. Board members, I see lots of sticky notes on our draft budgets. I see lots of highlights on our draft budgets. What questions do we have for Manager Dempsey and Director Blondie this evening? And I want to jump in and go first. Trustee Lentz?
Thank you. Manager Dempsey, you had in your presentation earlier showed the projected percentage change for water rates for not just Meridian but other townships. Where did you get those numbers from? I'm curious. I've heard, rumors of, City of Owasso needing an increase by so-and-so percent, but are those hard and fast numbers? I know we're going to hear from residents about this, so I want to them to know that we're making a calculated decision with this.
Yeah, certainly. And Deputy Manager Opsimer can jump up and correct me if I state this incorrectly, but he actually, they do the research. They go out and contact or check the communities, whether that information's available online or they need to call and talk to somebody. But actually do that with firsthand research to make sure that they have the accurate information. So, and that was just done recently to update that information to have current year data. I think he's nodding generally. Yeah. So.
Thank you, Mr. Opsimer. I also just wanted to, in general, thank the two of you for answering all of my questions. Board members, I sent them a document with about 40 questions throughout that did not need to be included on our meeting tonight, and I really do appreciate you walking me through that as the first time through this budget process on this side of the dais. It was immensely helpful, so a big shout out to you. I may have some more questions later, but I'll open it up before moving forward.
Trustee Wilson?
I'd like to talk a little bit about the healthcare plan because this came in after the budget was printed and it looks significant. First question is, there's a prescription drug rebate that you discussed. Is that expected to continue?
Yes, so on the bids that we have, certainly going into next year, it will. It's based on our discussions with Gallagher, our consultants. They indicated that, it's manufacturer driven and it's focused on specialty medication. So expectation is that hopefully that'll continue. They see it definitely into next year now, long term. Anytime I hear rebate or discount, you always have to question that. I don't know that we have a good handle on that. I think that's something we'll have to ask about the trend in that. What have they seen historically? What do they think will go into the future? So at least for next year, we feel comfortable with it. But beyond that, I don't know that I would rely on it unless we get a clear indication from them.
Do you feel that you will have all the proposals for health insurance in by what date do you think?
Well, we were hoping September 29th, and I'll see if Director Titoff shakes her head yes or no on that one too. I think that's when Gallagher was hoping to have everything wrapped up by the end of this month. So potentially ahead of our next board meeting. Potentially, I say, just because I think one of the things we're going to want to look into with the blues is also what does it look like for plan modifications, right? Because when you look at this dollar amount, the way that we've been talking about, at least initially, is sort of a three-pronged approach, right? One is you could go back to the budget and cut other things to cover that differential. Two is we could look at using fund balance, or three is looking at, another bid, which we do have, again, the pool coming in, or having Blue Care, modify plans to look at things like, premium co-share, which obviously is not ideal for employees, especially in a year we're cutting HSAs, or a combination of those three different options, right? So we don't have today yet a recommendation for you. It's going to really be driven by what those final proposals are and what they look like. But I could imagine some sort of combined approach, but we'd also love to get, the board's thoughts, if you have initial thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough nut to swallow if our costs increase 250,000 to 600,000 for just this year, because we can expect the same thing probably next year with
Yeah,
all
we-
the inflationary pressures.
Yeah, we're certainly, as we know, that number never goes down.
Yep.
The best we could hope for in future years is just a smaller increase. We thought 12% was a pretty aggressive approach, but clearly it's not. And, we could, at some point in the future, have a more detailed discussion on the healthcare plan in general, but essentially, we're seeing the same pressures that other larger employers are, right? You have, your sort of universe of claims, and there's always that group of claims that are on the higher end. And we're seeing, greater numbers there, right? Those dollar amounts that the plan's having to pick up above our stop loss gap, which is $35,000. So, we have claims that go well beyond that for more significant, right, chronic diseases, things like cancer treatment, et cetera. So
Sure.
it's a,
I did hear today that the local average for the surrounding greater Lansing area is running about 22%
Yeah.
increase.
yeah, Gallagher shared with us, they have one of their clients that's looking at a 38% increase, a community college and not in Ingham, outside of our region, but, yeah.
I'd also like to ask one big question about this Okemos consolidated drain situation. Could you, that's a scary thought that we may have a commitment for 20 years of potentially up to $500,000 a year. Can you clarify or talk a little bit about that particular project?
Yeah, sure, and again, Deputy Manager Opsimer can come up too. So right now, we don't have a clear-cut cost estimate of that. We've heard it could be in the $40 to $60 million range. There's a threshold for when the Drain Commission can go to a 30-year bond versus a 20. It's based on sort of pipe sizing, et cetera. We think that what they're looking at here could be a 30-year project. It's likely at least going to be in the $20 million range. That's why I gave a very broad range. And again, Dan ran some initial numbers he can speak to more specifically. The challenge will be like getting that number pinned down, right? What is the actual scope? And making sure throughout the process that we understand what the scope is and can influence that if we think it might not fit what is, appropriate. And then I think there's also going to be a process where we're going to want to educate our residents early, right? So they understand and we can work with them in dealing with the Drain Commission to ensure that we get the right project at a cost-effective number, as best as we can control that, and hopefully is a palatable number for us from a budget standpoint and our residents, right? We've all heard the horror stories of the bank drain and, Delta Township and Eaton County, the $60 million project and the impact that that's having. We certainly don't want to be in that position, but I don't know if Dan wants to add any color commentary.
Thank you, Manager Dempsey. I would concur on all that. The only thing I would add is that we do have 4 drains that will have debt service retired next year. So in this budget, there are funds in the Watershed Management Fund to pay down the debt service on 4 drains. We won't have any additional drains where we're retiring meaningful principal debt service until like 2035, right? So next year will be the only kind of cost offset that we have for this future Okemos consolidated drain project. That's just under $250,000 that we will retire in principal payments. But then we look, we will still have a net increase of $250,000 to $500,000 just based on our current projections. So even with that debt service being retired, we do have cost increases with the what's currently known for the Okemos consolidated drain. The only other thing that I would share at this time is we'll have updates over the next year. If the project were to proceed, which it certainly will likely proceed, right? I think what our strategy will be is pursuing all of our options to make sure it's a cost-affordable project for property owners, for the township, for MDOT, and for the county. So similar to the Lake Lansing Dam project, we're looking at all of our options and exploring what our next steps will be, but Right now, they plan on starting construction in 2027, so that would mean bonding in late '26. So we've got perhaps a year. We don't control all the schedules. But I would say we have at least, 10 months. We could have 2 years if they fall behind schedule. But we're already pursuing options, and we already kind of have a framework of how we're going to go about this.
If I could, before you leave, so just to clarify, when you say there's a $250,000 to $500,000 net change, what you're telling us is we're retiring that $250,000 that we're currently paying on, and so it's not going to be $250,000 to $500,000, it's going to be $500,000 to $750,000.
Yep.
Okay, annually.
And it could be worse. That's based on assumptions, right? That's assuming that we would receive, a certain at-large assessment. That's assuming 30-year financing, which, as Manager Dempsey noted, that's contingent upon a 36-inch diameter pipe or greater being part of the project. So if just one thing changes, right, one pipe diameter changes, then we're down to 20-year financing. So that would go up, another 33% each year on the principal side.
And the size of just, you don't have to give me every street, but the rough bounds of the project include where?
North limit would be essentially the north wall of high caliber karting. The south end of the district would be kind of the triangle green space south of the Okemos Mire. The eastern limit would extend into Forest Hills. We could have some overlap with Daniels Drain there because drain districts can overlap, right? A parcel can have drain district boundaries fall right on a parcel, right? You could have more than 2 drain districts fall on a parcel under certain conditions. And then the western boundary would essentially be Ottawa Hills. Right before Campus Hill Drive. There might even be a little bit of the parcels that make up the Campus Hill development. I think a lot of things have changed, though, and I think that will be our message to other stakeholders in this discussion. This was petitioned before the pandemic, if I recall correctly. At the very least, it was petitioned before inflation, right? So the project is, if not twice as much as it would have been pre-pandemic inflation, it's certainly close to it. The other thing that has changed is we have now raised the intersection at Okemos Road and Grand River Avenue. We are not seeing flooding there. If you go back and refer to the board packet materials when this drain project was petitioned, it was believed that this project was needed to help alleviate flooding at that intersection. We had a pretty wet season last year. We had the lowest water demand on record for Elmswa since 1984, which means that people were not irrigating their lawns because it was so wet last year. And despite that, we never closed that intersection for flooding. We had 3 major storm events. East Lansing had multifamily developments that were underwater, systemic flooding in neighborhoods, and we had no issues that we're aware of, but we're examining that too to see what specific property owners have expressed drainage issues. To the best of my knowledge right now, we don't know of any. So
I bring up the question simply to underscore that the township, of course, has a fiduciary responsibility to work with the drain office to attempt to mitigate costs because of the at-large assessment. However, the ancillary benefit of that is there are a ton of residents and businesses that are within that, this is our main commercial area. It includes downtown Okemos, it includes Mire, it includes the mall. I mean, these are massive assessments that are going to be levied out. And so every bit of negotiating power that we have needs to be brought to bear on this project as much as we can. As we've seen, the drain commissioner likes to, has had a tendency in the past to not cut corners or sharpen pencils. And so this is an opportunity for us to help him to find the pencil sharpener.
Yep. Prior to about 2 weeks ago when we met with the drain office, we were projecting, $10 to $20 million project. So we were a little taken aback by the current forecasts on that cost.
I should say. And, okay, yeah, Treasurer DeShane.
To that end, the issue of the drain commissioner is he's got a huge staff, $3 million in payroll, and every lick of work he does, he contracts out to Spice and other groups. So everything costs double with him. My fear, and I hope you're on this is in some ways make work. He wants to keep his staff and consultants, quote, busy. This is a project in search of a problem. It seems if it came up before the pandemic, there've been no flooding since then. What is the impetus for him to resurrect it at this point? We're not asking him for it, obviously.
Technically, we did petition this, so staff who are no longer here did recommend to the board that we petition this project. So as part, essentially the origin of this project was that there were a lot of little drain districts, and the drain office said, you know, we really want to consolidate these because they're so small that there's not enough parcels to distribute the cost of a project over. At the same time, we were concerned about the systemic flooding and closure of, you know, the state trunk line, right, that runs right through our main business corridor. So kind of those two things came together, and that's what formed this project. And Deputy Manager Perry had recommended to the board that we petition it. And so we were the petitioner. But the question is, how many other property owners are really expressing a concern about flooding? We believe there probably are some in Ottawa Hills because you have the river there, and the river does crest, but there's only so much that can be done to prevent the river from spilling over. We've been working for about 18, maybe even 24 months now, Director Schmidt, myself, and others to acquire property over on Algonquin, adjacent to the river in this drain district, right at the edge, for that very purpose. It's a house that was built in the floodway of the river. So we're trying to acquire the property, demolish the house, and add more green space for the floodway without homes and other structures in it.
I suppose it's too late to unring the bell.
It is, legally it is, but there's other tools and there's other stakeholders involved. So we'll pursue our options with all the stakeholders.
And I will add that after MDOT improved the road, Indian Hills is not flooding nearly as badly as it has in the past. So there's significant improvements since the road bed was changed.
Not germane to this budget, of course. This is the 2026 budget,
Right.
but it is helpful to know where we're going and know what challenges we'll be facing next year.
I have one more, if
Trustee
I may.
Wilson.
I'm concerned about, on page 42, the elections, the cost of the elections. We budgeted $265,000 for this year, for 26. But I look back and see that our actual for 2024, which was another sequence of multiple elections, did we have 3 that year?
4.
We have 4. 562,000. I'm concerned we don't have enough money that we are putting it into this budget for all the elections and election workers that we're going to need.
Well, certainly the clerk can chime in on this, but I think there's a couple of factors here. One is, you know, when we sat down and worked on the budget this year, we tried to be as collaborative as possible. So all the department directors, we had separate meetings to review their budgets, and we sat down with the clerk to sort of review where we were at with the most recent election. The challenge I think we had was sort of looking back to really understand what was done historically in terms of the number of temporary workers, how they were brought in, how long they were brought in. We think there's a lot of efficiencies that can be gained going forward. Does that mean that we're under budget? There's always that risk, right, potentially. But I think in terms of working a little bit more collaboratively with human resources, with my office, with the clerk's office, that we hopefully have a plan here that's going to be a little tighter in terms of how we manage that, a little bit more efficient. Now, again, we'll sort of see how things play out over time, but that's certainly the hope here. And I think we're hoping this is more realistic. But I'll let Director Blondie or Clerk Demas add in any other commentary on that. So,
Clerk Demas.
Just adding on to this, I mean, I'm always open to adding more to the elections fund, so be my guest. But I think working with the finance director and the manager regarding the elections fund, we were looking at how many temporary staff we've had in the clerk's office, and it was honestly an absurd amount. So I think just reducing the amount of staff that we have in there does decrease the amount in the elections fund. So that goes with that efficiency that Manager Dempsey was bringing up. I also think when we are doing precinct consolidation, we're going to have less precinct locations, which means less election inspectors needed. However, I mean, we will still have the same amount of polling locations, most likely. So we could always add more. I'm always open to that, but I think if Director Blondie wants to chime in on more of our reasonings for why we had a more conservative number for the elections fund, mine was mostly just staffing reductions.
Yeah, just like Clerk Demas said, it was mainly the temporary staffing. So we went through each election, what we would need, how many days before the election we would need workers, how many hours they would work, and we really went through and looked at the costs and see what did we need. I think we have a pretty fair estimate here. Like I said, we could be totally wrong, but I think we did our best on estimating what we think we needed.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I'm curious on that topic. As I understand it, there's reimbursement for election activities for state and federal elections. How do we, we budget $265. How do we account for the reimbursement that comes? Because I didn't notice that in any of the line items here.
We did not account for any reimbursements. We would account for that when it happens or when we know for sure that we will get that. I didn't want to estimate something that we weren't going to receive. So I left that out of this budget.
Okay.
Yeah, adding on to that, I actually did reach out to the county clerk's office to see about any reimbursements and whether we should account for that in the budget. And just to be safe, we decided not to pursue that in case we weren't going to receive any.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board members? Trustee Wentz.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'll get you next.
No, you're welcome to.
No, I've been doing it too.
Oh, you're good. Okay. My question has to do with revenue sharing. I'm curious how much of a calculus needs to be taken in when looking at the state budget with the governor's recommendation, the Senate's recommendation being very different from the House's recommendation, how much that might change budgets moving forward in general, and how much of an immediate concern that is, because in this budget here I see revenue sharing listed, but I'm just curious to see where those numbers came from and how they might be changed depending on what happens before or after October 1st.
Sure. Okay. So, well, the good news is that the proposed cuts are out of statutory revenue sharing, so that's a very small slice of ours. I think we're in the 250 range for next year, or generally historically as of recent years. It's a very formula driven. I think there's like 3 different components now to statutory. The vast majority of ours is constitutional, so we feel good about that. Essentially what Director Blondie does is looks back the last several quarterly payments to sort of see where we're trending and sort of use that as our future trend line. Then we sort of check with Treasury's numbers in terms of what they're projecting based on revenue estimating conferences and all of that good stuff. So we just try to come up with a number we think is fairly reasonable. We try to be very conservative with this because we do with all of our revenue numbers. And we feel like we're pretty good here. Now, we were talking earlier, the proposal could impact that statutory piece. We could lose maybe 100,000 of that. So that is another sort of risk factor, but compared to maybe like a city where statutory is a much greater percentage, we don't have the same level of anxiety over it as a township, thankfully.
Thank you. other question that I had written down that I, again, highlighting, thank you again for answering some of these questions in written form. But Director Blondie, your comment about the AMI collectors, I found very insightful. And as mentioned, we're going to hear from residents about any sort of increase in water, spending on water and sewer. I'd be interested in you kind of elaborating what you had mentioned in your response to me on that.
So I'll let Dan answer that one. He's the one that provided that. He knows more on the collectors than I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lenz, for the question. So essentially, just to kind of back up, because I know you're familiar with it, but just to kind of back up for the folks listening and watching at home and for your colleagues that haven't followed along with this project, as part of our meter replacements, what we're trying to do is get out ahead of that and identify meters quicker. So today, how we read meters for businesses, we read them every 30 days. So once a month, we will go read it. So for 30 days, we are blind, right? If there is a leak in that business or that multifamily development, we don't know about it until we go and get that read 30 days later. So that leak could persist for 10 days or the whole 30-day period if it were, to originate right after we previously read. For the residential customers, predominantly single-family homes, we're reading every 90 days. So if you have a toilet leak in your home, you could have a leak persist for 90 days and not know it. Now, our FAQ, there is always the old-fashioned way to do it. In our FAQ for utility billing and for leaks, item number 1 there is how to read your meter. You can actually do it very quickly. You go down, you write down the number. The next night, you go down, write down the number, subtract the 2. That'll tell you how many gallons you've used. So there's always the old-fashioned way to do it. But this technology, what it does is it reads meters every night around 1 a.m. It'll power up, and it'll read within a certain radius. So we have installed 2 AMI collectors, the first of which was installed last year as a pilot on the South Water Tower. About 3 months ago, we installed the second one on the North Water Tower. Now we are working on locations for the remaining collectors. So we're working on number 3, which right now will kind of be in the southwest corner of the township, approximately. So we're kind of looking around the Bennett Road area for collector 3 to pick up another zone. So in time, we hope to have 10 to 13 collectors, which will be able to read 100% of our system. There will be a second phase to this because we also need to make sure that the meters can send a strong enough signal, right? So after we get 100% coverage, we will have to go out and troubleshoot some meters and possibly wire the transmitter to like the foundation instead of keeping it in the basement to get a stronger signal. And once we get 100% coverage, what we intend to do is actually send information out to our customers, and they can set up an account. And they'll actually be able to monitor their water usage. You can set your account to text you alerts if you use a certain amount of water in a day, in a week, et cetera. So you could use it to monitor whether or not you're irrigating your lawn too much or whether or not you have a toilet leak. But we want to get the whole system built out. That will take 2 to 3 years to probably build out the entire system. We're no longer locating these on existing infrastructure. We're putting them on what will essentially be new wood utility poles that go on township property or possibly in road right-of-way. So the remaining ones are a little bit more challenging to install because we do have to install poles and things like that. It is a nice, helpful tool that will be a tremendous benefit to our residents, but also a major benefit to Director Blondie and the utility billing staff. Internally, we can program it to tell us, to generate a leak list every morning, right? Because if we see continuous usage, it can just generate an Excel spreadsheet, and we can send correspondence to those customers to let them know they have a leak.
Thank you for that thorough explanation. I highlight that because, I really do see this as following along with one of our new goals that we stated about making it easier and better to own a home here, especially those older homes that have leaks, to hear from your local government for the small price on the township budget of $180,000, every resident being able to understand if they do have a problem that could save them up to $200 over a 3-month period, I think is incredibly valuable, and I'm really happy to see it come forward, so thank you.
Some questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to focus on the change with the UB supervisor position to bookkeeper. I wanted to know how this will impact the budget with like pay changes, like to the wages, and then also how this will impact the department. So I'm assuming there was clearly at some point a need for the UB supervisor position. And I want to know if this need has changed. And I mean, like from your explanation, Manager Dempsey, we aren't finding the candidate that we need to fill this position, and we need more staffing to fit this department's needs. But I just want to know if down the line we will need a UB supervisor and why we are making this change now to go with a bookkeeper.
Yeah, so a couple things on this. I mentioned earlier, it's really challenging to find the supervisor role because, you know, working for a water system and having experience in this particular area is quite rare, right? Very difficult position to identify. We haven't had any resumes come through that have even merited, you know, interviewing for that role. So that's been first and foremost. But the second piece of it is we definitely recognize a need to have additional staffing there just to be able to keep pace with some of the work. You know, we're doing all these meter replacements. There's some corrective billing work that has to be done. Really keeping pace with that and ensuring we're getting that work done is important. I think it's our hope, though, over time, that depending on the needs of that group, that if we need to have somebody sort of step up and play a different role, whether that's supervisor or maybe a lead worker type role, we could potentially look at that. That remains to be seen. It's sort of, I think, first step is if we get a third person in there, let's see how the team functions. Let's see how it works with, you know, the director of finance managing that team and sort of taking it a step at a time, essentially. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I think you covered most the highlights of it.
Okay. Well, that's reassuring to hear. As for like pay changes, does that impact the budget?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So the savings is projected just over 30,000 by switching those roles. So there is a cost savings there that's part of the overall personnel savings that I highlighted earlier.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the information.
Sure.
Other questions? Well, I think in general, you know, this is very well done. No question about that. These budgets seemingly get harder and harder each year. And certainly we expect that likely won't change in the not too distant future. Thanks to our friends who made Proposal A possible. Despite our best efforts to increase our taxable values here in the township, which have certainly seen increases. I think most of my questions have been answered either tonight or previously, so I thank you for that. I also, you know, we have a couple of increases in here, including the 3.75 blended increase to water and sewer rates that our residents will feel. Hopefully they understand that, you know, we must keep up with the cost of our aging infrastructure in the same way that anyone else would, with any other component of maintenance in the home. But I think that overall, you know, we have never been a community that does things frivolously or spends on projects that we don't need to generally. And that is reflected here in the budget as well. And so thank you to Manager Dempsey, to Director Blondie, to the entire staff, especially the directors who are here in the room tonight and those who aren't, for proposing a sensible budget, a responsible budget, and one that I think that the board here and our residents at home will be proud of. Any other questions or discussion at this time? Seeing none, we'll see you back next time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. On a slightly lighter topic, we bring ourselves to agenda item 12B to discuss the format of our next listening session, which is on September 30th. Manager Dempsey has some suggestions for us.
Yeah, thank you. So again, for the background information for those watching at home. So the listening sessions, as all of you know, are typically structured so people come in, are seated, and we provide some information, give an overview of some key topics. We plan to continue to do that for this next session, like giving an update on the senior center, probably touching on local roads, very brief presentations. But then the next piece of it is typically just opening the floor to residents to provide some feedback. And I think one of the things that staff has acknowledged is that sometimes we get participants there that certainly want to hear and are probably interested in maybe coming forward with some questions, but might have some hesitation to do so, right? Not everybody is comfortable being in a large group setting and standing up in front of a large group. That can be, uncomfortable for people who are more introverted. So we recognize and acknowledge that. So I think what we're thinking about doing is sort of a simple step in a more collaborative conversation, and then that would be structured as people sort of come in, providing them with note cards where they can be seated and actually sort of just write out their questions to us. So everybody gets an opportunity to submit. We can collect those cards. We can have staff there who will then sort of categorize those and put those in groupings, and then we can sort of tackle them in that fashion, giving everybody that opportunity to provide the information. We talked a little bit about having it structured in maybe small group discussion. The challenge there is we want to be consistent in our response. We want to make sure that all residents hear the same information coming from us. So we think this is a way to get everybody to provide that opportunity to give input, whether it's a question or just a statement of opinion, to do that, and then we can provide consistent answers. We can certainly then open it up as well in the third piece, or third sort of portion of the program, to still have more questions come forward. There might be follow-up questions that surface. We're certainly not eliminating that piece of it and that sort of back and forth, but we think having this step where people provide us that information up front is just a way to, again, collect more feedback and input from others. So we're thinking of making that shift here and seeing how that goes, but certainly it's up for discussion because, again, it's really the board's listening session. We want to structure it in a way that makes sense to all of you and has value for what you're after.
Thank you. Board members, any thoughts on that change in format? Trustee Trezise.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea. The other thing it allows us to do is by grouping the questions, we can avoid duplicate questions to an extent. So we can deal with more of the issues in a fixed time. So you could even open it up to questions before, but it's not televised, so people wouldn't see the responses. So I think the cards are a good selection is to see that we can get more involvement and also address more questions.
Agreed.
Others?
Looking forward to it.
Clerk Demas.
I really appreciate the suggestion. I know that we had a meeting, Manager Dempsey, where we went over the listening session and the setup of it. I expressed how I want it to be more collaborative and be able to sit with members of our community and really hear what they're saying and have conversations. I think this is a step towards that direction, and I'm open to hearing more suggestions that you have further down the line.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Trustee Wilson.
I think it's going to be important to have updates on our key things that people look at around the community. So I think we need to be up to date in what we say about the Hazlet Village project, Village of Okemos, which I hear about every single day. You mentioned the senior center, the roads, the water and sewer bills and the upcoming change to them in '26, and an update on the pathways.
Okay.
Those are the things I think people really want to know about.
Great.
And to be clear, the first listening session that we did in June mailers were sent out to all residents. This one is being held in Hazlet, and we've specifically advertised this to folks on the north side of the community. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's correct. We divided the township into north and southern halves. So the northern half received the mailer for this event. It also has the date for the next one. And then for the next event, we'll do it to the southern half, obviously to keep our cost reasonable.
Yeah, I mention it because we likely are going to be hearing more about Hazlet Village than we are about Village of Okemos, given the nature of the residents who are likely to have received this. And we also likely, to add to your list, we'll be hearing about Hazlet Road and the traffic situation on that.
Yeah, safety.
Safety issues.
The board's received some emails. I've seen some discussion on social media about that. We're likely to hear from our residents about that as well.
Okay. We'll be prepared for all those.
Yes.
I received the mailer, so good work on that. I had a question about, well, actually, I had some residents ask me what topics we'll be discussing at the listening session, and I just wanted to know what information we have out there for residents to view on our website, just if we have any, I don't know, presentations or anything that they can see before the listening session comes up to prepare, just if you could provide any information here.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly, the topics that were mentioned tonight, we could think about how we communicate, updates on those, just so people are aware of that. Certainly, we want people to recognize if there's not a topic that they're interested on the list. That's the whole point too. Come forward and bring it so we can discuss it. The other thing that we try to emphasize throughout is that we always do a written document afterwards that summarizes our responses and puts that information together. So all of the prior listening sessions, residents and others can find those documents, and we'll have that document as well after that, but that is after the event.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Any further discussion? Then we look forward to seeing everyone on September 30th. And once again, if you are watching at home and are hoping to know where that's at, I just clicked right past it. It's at St. Luke Lutheran Church, which is at 5589 Van Atta Road in Hazlet. And that's at 6 o'clock on September 30th. All right, that brings us to agenda item 13, comments from the public. Any members of the public wishing to make comments at this time? Seeing no one rushing to the podium, we'll close public comment at 8 o'clock p.m. Lastly is, I guess second to last, is other matters and board member comments. Any other matters and board member comments this evening? I will simply add that if anyone is interested in applying for the township treasurer position, that posting is open until 4 o'clock tomorrow. Please make sure that you complete all portions of the application, as only completed applications will be accepted. And those can be submitted through our website. There's a big banner on the front page. You can find out more about that. They've got big shoes to fill. And that brings us to item 15. Treasurer DeShane, would you do the honors?
Yes, I move we adjourn.
It's been moved to adjourn. Do we have a support?
Support.
Supported by Trustee Wilson. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We stand adjourned at 8 p.m.